Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and today we're going to be diving into my top 10 wide receiver rankings for the 2022 season. I've dived into some tier lists where we look for a bit more similarities between these players, but today I'm going to be giving you my top 10 numeric rankings, so actually splitting these players up, breaking them apart, and then, comparing and contrasting how I see their situations playing out this season. So before we dive into today's video, drop down, give today's episode a like, and click that subscribe button to join the community. We're trying to grow here, get as many people helped out for this fantasy season as possible, and my goal is to become the most interactive fantasy football YouTuber out there. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, drop that stuff down below, and I will get back to you guys as timely as I can and help you out with whatever questions you have this season. So as always, drop down in the description of today's episode, check out some of the links we got. We just posted our first exclusive drop of the season on SFS Weekly. It's totally free. All I need is your email address, and I'm only going to send you 1 to 2 emails a week with exclusive articles, content, and all kinds of great stuff. We just put that first rendition or volume edition drop, whatever you want to call it, out on Sunday afternoon, and that's when I plan on posting those every single week. We talked through my 10 secrets for 2022 fantasy football leagues. This week, my exclusive article, will be centered around the top quarterback and wide receiver stacks for this season. So we're going to take a look at the draft board, talk through some names, and obviously fitting for today's video, the best ADP lineups here for where to target quarterbacks and wide receivers that pair really nicely together in this year's fantasy football league. So as always, you guys, thanks so much for tuning into today's video. Again, make sure to like and subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get into our number one wide receiver. One more thing, if you guys are looking for a fantasy football draft guide for the 2022 season, I've got you covered on sizzlefantasy.com. We can get you a draft guide for either less than $5 a month here, or if you want to head over and deposit a one-time $10 on Underdog Fantasy, the link to join Underdog is in the description of today's episode. This evening, we've got Game 5 of the NBA Finals. If you want to go on Underdog, deposit $10. They'll double your money for you. You can bet on their promo bet tonight, which is Draymond Green between between rebounds and assists. He needs one total, so he literally needs to record a non-point stat. If he gets one rebound or assist, you're halfway there. You just got to get one Celtics leg correct, and you're going to triple your money. So if you put $10 in that game, you're going to win $30 for getting one Celtic line tonight correctly. And then when you sign up on on Underdog using promo code SFS, again, the link to join is in the description of today's video. But code SFS will get you a free 2022 draft guide on sizzlefantasy.com. And we got everyone set up with that signed up last week. So go check out Underdog. Again, promo code SFS gets you the draft guide free, or on sizzlefantasy.com. It'll be just under $5 a month for the entire draft guide and site-wide access all year long. So Cooper Kupp is my wide receiver one for this coming fantasy season. He was the Triple Crown winner last year, the wide receiver one easily last season, and plain and simple, it comes down to unprecedented volume at the wide receiver position. You're talking about a guy who had 191 targets and recorded 145 receptions on those nearly 200 targets. That's a recipe for a lot of damage. And you're talking about a guy who had nearly 2,000 receiving yards, 1,947, in 16 receiving touchdowns, which is equal to the amount of passing touchdowns that Jalen Hurts had in 15 games this past year. So ridiculous, unworldly stats. It's arguably one of the best statistical seasons at the wide receiver position ever in the National Football League. And I don't expect him to do that again this season, but I think that if you're looking for a strong, stable, and safe draft pick, Cooper Kupp is absolutely that player. Now, his ADP is actually positioned himself in front of Christian McCaffrey on draft boards, and I totally see why. You're getting a safer player who doesn't necessarily have over the past 2 seasons. Now, Cooper Kupp does have an ACL injury on his resume, but we're pretty much out of the clear for that, I would say. And, not that I want to totally promote going Cooper Kupp over Christian McCaffrey, but just trying to analyze the ADP a little bit for you guys here. He is a far safer option. When you talk about CMC only playing in 10 total games over the last 2 years, he played, 3 in 2020 and 7 last season. You're getting a much more reliable and dependable target in terms of the recent track record for Cooper Kupp's availability on the field. So Again, coming off a historical season, a guy who's going to give you stable, super high floor value on a weekly basis in a very strong passing offense. Matt Stafford was the QB5 last year. It just makes sense that he is the top receiver off the board. Again, you're going to see regression probably in the yardage, probably the targets category as well. Receiving touchdowns should regress back to the mean of just around 8 to 10, maybe 11 receiving touchdowns. We'll see though. Really the only receiver that comes to mind in terms of having consistent double-digit TD production has been Davante Adams, but he just had a situational change this year. So we'll be diving into that here in just a second. But Cooper Kupp is still my wide receiver 1 for this season. And number 2 here, we've got Justin Jefferson. I just put out a video last Saturday. Super great deep dive where I really went in depth with Justin Jefferson versus Jamar Chase, battling for that wide receiver 2 and 3 position on my draft board this year. We went into all the nitty-gritty details, so I'll let you guys go check out that ADP battle between Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Obviously, if you have common sense, you can tell who's higher on the board here, so who won that ADP battle. But if you really want the in-the-weeds information that we went into there, in all of the different X factors in the situations and all of the different minuscule numbers and stats we took a peek at, go check out that video. I'll leave it in the cards of today's episode. But what you need to know about Justin Jefferson here is there is a whole lot to be excited about. 167 targets, was 4th in the NFL last year. That's fantastic. 108 receptions. Again, 4th. You'd like to see that conversion maybe be slightly higher, but he did lead the NFL in drops, something that's totally correctable and fixable. He had some pretty bad drops last year that could have been huge plays, but again, this is one of the top 3 or 4, maybe even 5 most talented receivers in the game right now. 1,616 yards. Again, I'm not someone who's going to be crazy about yardage production because at the end of the day, things like touchdowns and efficiency are going to be a lot more important overall. Obviously, volume is crucial as well. But you're kind of, and that's for players who are hovering more towards the 1,000-yard receiving marker. 1,616 is a different animal, and for a guy who's got back-to-back 1,400-yard seasons, clearly you're getting elite levels of production out of Justin Jefferson, and a bonus and boost of point totals that is far better than 95% of the wide receiver landscape here. What's really interesting to me, what I love to see, was 1,996 air yards for Jefferson this past season. That was number 1. So the distance the ball traveled between Kirk Cousins' arm and Justin Jefferson was the highest of any other player in the NFL. That's something that's very encouraging because that gives you the opportunity for a lot of big plays downfield. And then 10th in receiving touchdowns, that's ranked 7th, top 10 in the category is great. Double-digit touchdowns is phenomenal. That's how you're going to get to those elite wide receiver finishes. There is room for improvement, but it's also not a guarantee because, again, touchdown projection is something that's kind of wildly inconsistent to predict on a year-to-year basis unless you're, again, going back to that Davante Adams example, he was in a spot with Green Bay for 4 years, little to no target competition. He was clearly the best red zone route running option, and he had Aaron Rodgers for all those years since 2016, which is why he's number 1 in receiving TDs since that year. So that is a clear and obvious indicator and marker that you can point to. Justin Jefferson, yes, is walking into year 3 with Kirk Cousins, so maybe we can start to develop a trend here and an expectation. But at the end of the day, give me that 30% target share, and let's call it a day. Jamar Chase at number 3 here for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the reason to sum up that ADP battle video, which again I think goes into some really great detail, so I highly encourage you to go check that one out. But Jamar Chase is simply one of the most efficient wide receivers in the game. Now, another one of those kind of, not a deal breaker, but basically the difference in the situation here is that Jamar's got more significant competition for targets than Jefferson does. You're talking about a guy who has, between his wide receivers 2 and 3 in the Cincinnati offense, a 42.3% collective target share to those two names versus just a 35.7% target share collectively between Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne. Now, both situations, I would say, have the opportunity to increase. I think T. Higgins is definitely someone who warrants a lot of attention and actually had a higher target share than Jamar Chase did in Cincinnati in 2021. But I think that Adam Thielen is kind of at his cap. The only name I can really see increasing there in Minnesota would be Osborne, or potentially the combination of Osborne and Irv Smith, eating into Jefferson's targets a little bit here, but I think there's a lot more opportunity for that Vikings situation to remain similar in terms of being a lower number than Cincinnati, because I think the talent in Cincinnati, the other options to throw the ball to, is just greater. So despite the fact that Ja'Marr Chase is one of the most efficient wide receivers in the NFL, he was number 8 in yards per route run and number 3 in yards per target. Those are elite numbers to be at. He was 3rd in deep targets, getting those vertical passing opportunities, which is all great. The one question I have is that if Ja'Marr Chase is not going to get that elite volume in terms of 140, 150 plus targets in a yearly basis, which he could do, I just don't think it's a lock because, again, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, even Hayden Hurst and Joe Mixon, I think have relevant pieces of that target share. Again, not super high, but relevant enough to not just open the door for him to totally suck up the volume in this offense. Can he maintain those 13 TDs he had last year, especially when you're talking about a guy who didn't have elite red zone targeting numbers? He was simply producing vertical touchdowns, run after the catch production, and giving you a lot of the spectacular, which is not necessarily a high volume of passes, 20 yards or closer to the end zone. So Ja'Marr Chase, number 3, not a perfect, player here in terms of volume. In most cases is king at the end of the day. And I don't think Ja'Marr Chase is someone that gives you that at a super elite level as compared to, for example, Stefon Diggs, who's my number 4 wide receiver. He was 5th in targets last year. You're telling me I get a receiver who has the quarter mark, so 25% of the Buffalo Bills target share tied to Josh Allen? You should be signing up for that time and time and time again. Now, after a slightly disappointing 2021 year, and it's not that Stefon Diggs was bad last season, it was just that he wasn't nearly as good as he was in 2020. He didn't have quite the ceiling he had during that season. I mean, it's pretty hard to one-up yourself when you had that Week 16 championship-clinching 3 TD performance against the Pats in 2020. But again, last year he was very dang good. He just wasn't nearly as good, or at least the games he produced in didn't feel nearly as impactful. So, I guess someone who was on the opposite side of Diggs' Week 16, we'll call it the fantasy massacre for whoever he was playing. Despite having Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams going up against him, I fell victim to those games. Again, the point here being he was very good last year, had 25% of the target share, was 5th in targets. He just didn't have quite as high of a catch rate percentage. It dropped by nearly 10%, and his efficiency was down a little bit. So if he can get back to those numbers, I'm very confident with his talent, Josh Allen's arm, the ability to have weapons surrounding you in that offensive infrastructure in Buffalo that are diverting attention away from Diggs and not letting defenses just key into him every single play. You're going to get a lot of opportunity for upside and have a lot of chances to hit home run balls over the top and get back to those efficiency numbers, improve that catch rate back up to what it was in 2020, and make positive steps in the right direction. Number 5 here is Deebo Samuel. If Deebo gets used as a wide back again this year, I think he's a very legitimate player that can get into the top 5 range or even the top 3 levels of production. He's the wide receiver 3 last year, especially Stefon Diggs. I think he could bunny hop if he is that wide back this season. And, if they used him for a wide back, Deebo said it himself, if he was a wide back from week 1 last year, he probably would have been a 1,000 guy in terms of having 2,000 yards from scrimmage and being just a lethal producer in both areas of San Francisco's offense. But there are some significant longevity and consistency issues here. We don't know if that's going to be his usage here in 2022. There has been rumors that Deebo doesn't want to be a wide back because obviously in contract negotiation time, San Francisco can play their cards wisely and say, well, you're someone that's probably going to have a shorter shelf life. You're already somewhat of an older rookie coming into the NFL, and you're more of a running back to us than you are a wide receiver. So we're going to treat you as such in the contract negotiation space. And that pissed Deebo off. That's why he was out at the club saying, I'm not coming back to San Francisco. Nope, won't catch me in Kyle Shanahan's offense again. And that's where those rumors came from of not wanting to play such a physical play style. If Deebo's just a traditional wide receiver, he's got a chance because of his talent and explosiveness to finish as a wide receiver 1, being a top 12 player this year, but he will not be top 5. If that's not his usage, if that goes away and is out of the situation here, Deebo Samuel will not be in my top 5 rankings or should not be in my top 5 rankings because he has the talent to be that guy. He has the opportunity to be that type of player. But clearly, there are some question marks and some red flags here. A quarter of his fantasy points last year came on the ground. He had 8 rushing TDs. I'm going to phrase the question here. I don't have the answer for you, but is that number sustainable? He's a unique player, a one-of-one talent, one of the most large and physically imposing players at the position I've seen in a very long time, and obviously his usage is very unique to anything we've seen at the NFL level. Again, though, is that sustainable? I don't know the answer to that question. If they use him and implement him the way they did last year from week one, absolutely it's sustainable. But if they scale that back, if Deebo refuses to use that level of physicality in San Francisco's offense this year, it will not happen. And I think the answer to that question is no, if that is the case. So I'll wait and stay posted for more information on Deebo Samuel. I think it's one of the most intriguing, potentially changing fantasy situations of this upcoming season. Davante Adams, I'm a Green Bay Packer fan, so I'm going to come out and say this right now. It hurts to see him in a Raiders uniform, but dang, does that uniform swap look absolutely sick with a tinted visor and the black jersey. It kills me to say this, Packer fans. I'm really sorry, but he truly looks like he belongs in the silver and black. That's quite the look there for Tay. But at number 6 here again, breaking my heart, trading or becoming traded to the Las Vegas Raiders is Davante Adams. I do think his fantasy stock sees objectively a bit of a dip here in Las Vegas, simply because you're leaving a Packers infrastructure, the nucleus of the situation, and the primary production points from this Packers offense was Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. These two made this football team go. And it's that 30% annual target share. It's that almost guaranteed lock for double-digit receiving touchdowns when he's healthy and plays almost all the games in a season. It's a level of upside that quarterback provided to Davante Adams that gave him such a great shot to be a perennial top 3 fantasy receiver. The competition for targets and the competition for opportunity has drastically shifted in a negative direction. Now, there are positives here. Davante's not going to be bracketed and double-teamed over the top and having safety shading every single play like he was in Green Bay. That was very prevalent this season, despite the fact he had a 30% target share, 160-plus targets, and was being thrown like nearly every 1 in 3 passes from Aaron Rodgers. There is the, again, fact that he had that enhanced level of defensive attention thrown his direction. He won't have that per se in Las Vegas every single time, because Waller and Renfrow are going to take attention away and demand defenses to respect them as playmakers. But that also means you're probably going to see less looks head Davante Adams' way on a per-game basis. There was 234 targets vacated from the Raiders' offense in the 2021 offseason, so you do have the opportunity for Adams to still have plenty of work to soak up and plenty of opportunity. And again, usage, he will get volume. I'm not going to be shocked if he cracks 140 targets this year. I just don't know if it's going to be nearly 170 like it's been here in Green Bay, pushing into the high 160s. And obviously, again, a 30% target share, which is pretty ridiculous. So I do think his presence and chemistry with Derek Carr is a big deal. Obviously, they've been training and practicing together in the off seasons for years now. So these guys are going to be on the same page. I just don't think that, despite Davante's comments, that Derek is quite Aaron Rodgers. And I think that for Davante Adams, the offensive production total is going to be higher now that he is with the Las Vegas Raiders. But how close can he get to those Green Bay numbers will be the question for this season's fantasy. Mike Evans, someone that I am huge on for this fantasy season. I think there's a lot of opportunity for upside production and fantastic numbers here. You've got Tom Brady coming back. That's huge. That's the most important part of this situation. Obviously, if Kyle Trask or someone else was the QB for Tampa that wasn't a proven and established player, we were going to have, I would rather see Jameis Winston get traded to the Buccaneers and play QB than I would. Honestly, technically, Mike Evans' numbers with Jameis Winston in fantasy were the best of his career. But where I was going with that is that if Kyle Trask was going to be the starter for this season, if Tom stayed in retirement, I would have been very happy to see Jameis Winston under center more so than I would Kyle Trask, despite the similarities and upside and all that crazy stuff. But getting off on a tangent here, obviously TB12 coming back is big things in a positive direction for Mike Evans. The main ticker, the main thing that moves the needle, though, is Tampa's passing production from a season ago. One thing that I think gets overanalyzed, and I kind of started foreshadowing this a bit earlier in the video when I was talking about yardage with Justin Jefferson, though, is that, 8 straight seasons of Mike Evans? He came in the league in 14, so this should be his 8th year, so it should be 7 straight seasons of 1,000-plus receiving yard production. That's great. That's cool. But at the end of the day, 1,000. Did y'all just hear that? That was the loudest thunder and lightning rumble I think I've ever heard in my life. I recorded a video earlier, so I'm sure you guys could hear that because it was like lightly rumbling and the mic was picking that up. That was insane. Mike Evans, wow, what were we talking about? The Tampa Bay Lightning just came down on me here in Wisconsin. So basically, Mike Evans, the 1,000-yard seasons are great, but if you do your yardage production for the wide receiver position, that is 100 points in fantasy. So you need that volume, you need the receptions in PPR formats, you need the touchdowns, which is something Mike Evans does very well. You need that touchdown production to boost that upside and take you to the next level here. When you talk about the targets vacated, though, with Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin coming off the ACL, now he will play football this year, but something I have said time and time again already here in just the months of May and June is that how much can we really depend on the player coming off a significant injury? It's a big deal. It's something that there's a mental aspect to this as well that isn't just physical health. You have to truly get back into true playing form and shape. And yeah, you can come back and play football cleared for contact after 9 months of an ACL injury. But how much of yourself will you truly be from the player you were pre-injury is the question. I think this bodes very well for Mike. I think that for a team that was dominating football teams last year, was in contention for the number 1 seed in the NFC, Tampa Bay was still number 1 in passing plays per game. They were number 1 or Tom Brady was number 1 in passing yardage, and they were number 1 in red zone passing attempts. So you've got a red zone monster, an elite possession receiver, a guy who can go up and get that football, win vertically. Mike Evans is the complete package here, except for the fact that he doesn't run a 4.3 40. There's the lightning again. Mike is going to give you tremendous upside, and for a guy who can be truly targeted and locked in on here as the number 1 passing option in this Buccaneers offense, you're going to get a lot of positive production here from Mike this season. Ceedee Lamb at number 8, he's got volume coming his direction this year. I think this is going to be Ceedee's first 150-plus target year. You're talking about 164 targets opened up just between having Amari Cooper gone, and then that would be 103 targets, and then the other 61 are kind of a question mark from Michael Gallup. How many targets will he get this year? Just coming off that ACL again, another player dealing with that situation. And then Jalen Tolbert comes in, so how much of that does he soak up? But Ceedee still saw, over 100 targets last year. So you're talking about a guy that doesn't need to make like a ridiculous jump here. He does have to have some improvement in that statistical category. But you do have to see a guy who will get that next step in volume. This is a player that hasn't necessarily produced up to his talent potential or the potential that his talent would suggest that he has. But Dallas is a team. Dak Prescott was 10th in yards per attempt last year at 7.5, so he can be pretty efficient. A team that was 4th in team passing attempts per game, which I expect to stay very close to that marker. Because you're talking about a team that I think defensively will have some regression. They're not going to have the same takeaway numbers they had last year. It's just not sustainable. And you're talking about a team that down the stretch of the year, as Zeke tends to wear out, and as whether it's the Cowboys being impatient, whatever the case is, they tend to start throwing the ball more down the stretch than they do at the start of the year. And I saw a lot of great flashes from Ceedee last year. You've got the Tampa Bay game. I thought he looked fantastic there. The New England game, the walk-off TD, looked amazing in that contest. He did have a concussion and some ankle injuries that I think slowed him down a bit last season, but I think we're in for the first potentially elite season for Ceedee. I could see him outproducing this marker. Tyreek Hill, the cheetah in Miami. Now, a lot of Deebo Samuel comparisons have been tossed around this offseason. Obviously, when you've got Mike McDaniel, the OC from San Francisco, heading over to be the new head coach of the Dolphins. By the way, I'm totally rooting for Mike McDaniel. He's just a goofy dude. His press conferences are really fun to watch, so go check those out if you haven't. They're just entertaining to watch. He says some funny stuff. Even like before they traded for Tyreek, he was like, "Yeah, I would draft Jalen Waddle in your fantasy leagues." And they were like, why, Mike? Why would we do that? And he's like, nah, you're going to give your best player the football a lot. And it's just like blunt humor, and it's funny. You have to go watch it for yourself. I hope to be as funny as Mike McDaniel. That's my aspiration in life, to someday be a fraction as humorous as Mike McDaniel can be. But besides the point here, Tyreek Hill. Is he Deebo Samuel? No. Does he have the size that Deebo has? No. Is he as physical or as strong as Deebo Samuel? No. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but I just don't see things, especially at Tyreek's ADP. His ADP is slipping, but at times I've seen him go in the late first or early second round of best ball drafts just because he does have that upside as a guy who's insanely explosive. But when I look at the numbers for Jalen Waddle last year, yes, I think Tyreek will take precedence. Yes, I think he's the most talented, most refined, best player at the pass catching position in this offense, although Jalen Waddle is absurd as a talent as well. But Waddle lined up in the slot, 43.8% of plays last year for the Miami Dolphins, and that's an area of the field that is very, very valuable. For a player as twitchy and explosive as these two athletes are, who I think are very comparable to one another, getting them in a situation where they have the field advantage both to their outside and inside breaking route tree. If you run option routes with these guys, they're going to completely eat up slot corners, even the best of the best in the National Football League. You could go 4 wide every play and put both of them in the slot and just terrorize the hell out of defenses. I don't know if they'll do that, though. We'll see. I think that they want to have a healthy run game with Tua. They brought in a lot of backs this offseason, from Sony Michel to Raheem Mostert to Chase Edmonds. They totally just wiped and dumped everyone that played for them last year. Myles Gaskin is literally the RB4 on the depth chart now. So it's a big question mark. We don't exactly know how this situation is going to play out, but again, with Waddle playing such a high snap percentage in the slot last year, having 142 targets, which was 24.8, so 0.2% lower than a quarter of the target share in the Dolphins offense, there's only so much work to have here. Yes, the ceiling is going to drastically improve for the Miami offense. They're going to run more plays this season. They're going to elongate drives further. They're going to be on the football field more, having greater time of possession. All those great things will improve this season. But at a point, there's a cap. He's not Patrick Mahomes. And yes, Tyreek just said, in terms of accuracy, I'll take Tua over Mahomes. And this isn't an anti-Tua thing, but it is a he's not Mahomes thing. It's just plain and simple. He's not Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry, Dolphins fans. I've hated on Tua before. I'm literally trying my best not to do that right now because I don't care that Tua is a pocket passer, a guy who has accuracy. He can get them the football. That's all fine and good. But the upside of the vertical passing game, the ability for Mahomes to off-script break the tackle box and just rifle a ball downfield with pinpoint accuracy. I mean, you think about that Super Bowl play where he was literally stretched out like you're diving for the first down marker, and he just flicks that sucker and hits Cheetah right in the hands. And, he didn't catch the pass, but it's a drop-off. It is a difference. And when you have someone so similar in terms of skill set in your offense, they're going to have to intentionally move away from getting Jalen Waddle the football in order to get Tyreek Hill the football to outscore some of the other names on this top 10 list. So it feels like I was really just beating up and bashing Tyreek. I think this will be a nice situation. I think things will work out, and I think he will have successful weeks. I think he'll have a healthy amount of volume still, and I still think he's one of the best talents at the wide receiver position in the National Football League. But he is no longer a perennial top 3 or even top 5 option because of the situational change between a generational quarterback and a guy who, I'm sorry, but the verdict is still out in terms of he's even a franchise guy. And then T. Higgins here. So the weekly ceiling for T. Higgins is definitely lower than Tyreek Hill. But T. Higgins is a guy who I don't really see, if we manage our expectations. ADP is all about expectations. If you think about, that's why they're being drafted there, is because people expect them to do X, Y, or Z. T. Higgins, so there's some people who are, I'll say it, I think you're crazy if I've had people who are trying to tell me that T. Higgins will outscore Jamar Chase. I promise you, if Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both play X amount of games, the same equal number of games, Jamar Chase will have more fantasy points. You're talking about a guy who, as a rookie, had to come out and find his treading in the National Football League and get on track, learn the ways of the NFL, and he scored more points. It was number 5 in points per game last year for fantasy. Again, not trying to beat up on T. Higgins, but I don't see it in terms of people who say that T. Higgins is just a better fantasy player than Jamar Chase. Besides the point, if we manage our expectations, and there's a totally other side of the spectrum that doesn't trust T. Higgins at all because they are so locked in on Jamar Chase and naive to T. Higgins' ability to be successful in this offense, we have to find a happy medium in some middle ground in terms of realistic expectations for the two. I think that if you expect T. Higgins to be a low-level wide receiver 1 and don't expect him to put up consistent elite production. I mean, unless we're talking like Jamar Chase is like gone for the season and has a devastating injury, that's not the fantasy outlook for T. Higgins. But if you expect him to be a top 9 to 12 option on a weekly basis, a guy who you're not really going to look back and say, man, I wish I didn't draft him, it's something where I think that you're setting yourself up to get a really reliable guy who actually saw 0.2% more of the target share in Cincinnati last year. So they're basically on level ground there. He's not getting quite the amount of deep and vertical targets that Jamar Chase was. He, again, was number 3 in deep targets last season. But he's capable of doing that. We saw him make humongous plays in the Super Bowl. His playoff stretch, that being T. Higgins, is insane. And a quarterback in Joe Burrow that he's tied to that is number 1 in deep accuracy in the 2021 season and was number 1 in accuracy when under pressure for a guy who was 32nd in pass protection rate last year. So he was last. The Bengals had the worst pass protection ratio in the NFL, and Joe Burrow was number 1 in accuracy for throws under pressure. So he can stand up to it. The O-line got a lot better this year. Again, number 1 in deep accuracy despite all of the above. This Bengals offense is something you just want to tie yourself to. You want to have shares in the Cincinnati offense, whether it's getting T. Higgins or a Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon. I'm taking all those guys. Heck, I'm interested in Hayden Hurst late in fantasy this year because he's tied to Joe Burrow, because he's tied to the Cincinnati offense. And I think all of this is possible despite the fact I think their game scripts will get a little bit better this year because we know they're a Super Bowl level team. They can get deep into playoffs. This team will win more games this season, I believe, than they did last year if they stay healthy. And even last year, not being a team that was elite in the regular season, they still were 16th in passing plays per game. So in the halfway middle of the pack in the NFL, despite having an elite downfield passing quarterback, 2 elite boundary weapons at the wide receiver position, and a guy in Tyler Boyd in the slot who I think can do a heck of a lot of damage. So those are my top 10 wide receivers. I've had a lot of fun talking through today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed as well. If you did, drop down, leave today's episode with a like, click that subscribe button if you're new around here. Again, ask me questions. I'm going to be super interactive with you guys, answering your questions, helping you guys out this offseason. Anything you guys need from me, check out the description. There's so much stuff. The draft guide, Underdog Fantasy. You can get the whole draft guide for the next year if you sign up for Underdog and use code SFS during the month of June for the next calendar year. So until June of next season, that offer stands again until the end of the month here. You can go get it for a different deal on sizzlefantasy.com if you want to pay per month. Maybe you need the draft guide for 1 month and that's it. You can sign up, subscribe. If you like what's on there, you'll get that exclusive content all season long. But if not, no strings attached. You can cancel anytime. Go check out our other social media accounts, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Posting a lot more stuff on there. I'm going to try and post Weddle every day. I did that today. And stuff's been performing pretty well throughout the morning, especially on Instagram. So go check all that stuff out, you guys. I'm super appreciative of all your support, your comments, your questions. Join the Discord community. We're going to be doing fantasy leagues together on Underdog, so another reason to go sign up and join that platform. But I'll see you guys potentially in another video today. That might have to wait for tomorrow, though. I'm not so sure how I'll be doing with time. But I'll see you guys there. Peace out.